One, two, three. Here's Tiger here. Well, I finally decided to get something done here. Or at least put something on video for you. What I wanted to go over is the influences and my experience in painting. So, starting off with, I used to go to the library a lot, and there I found all about wargaming. I already showed you one of my earlier books, Joseph Morris Chaucer, Wargaming in Miniatures. And in this book, they had pictures of wargame miniatures and also games in progress. Alright, so, and I found it really exciting. They even had some modern stuff there. And so anyway, they talked about using miniatures for gaming. So a lot of these things, like this was from the library, they discarded this, and it also has pictures about wargaming. Nothing really fancy like actual pictures. Well, actually it does. It does have a few pictures in there. Okay, now it's called Wargaming. It's by EP Publishing Limited in 1976. You might still find it in some of your libraries. And of course, there's most kids go through some kind of phase of modeling, plastic modeling. And of course, everybody wants to paint their models at some point, or they give you some paints to use. I never saw any of this until my adulthood, about putting together models. I just, they would give me a kit, and I'd put it together with some glue, and whatever paint I had on hand, that's what we used. And then there was one book in the library that I eventually got a hold of, and it is by Donald Featherstone. Okay, it's called The War Game. Oh, hold it, this isn't by Donald Featherstone. This is a different one. Anyway, so but the one by Donald Featherstone was a similar book that had pictures of war games in progress. Actually, the one by Donald Featherstone had it was about wargaming for specific battles, and it would have a picture of the overall landscape and where the armies were located, and then he would have pictures of the miniatures painted. And I always thought that would be a cool thing to play. So you can see some of the colored pictures in here. I did get a Donald Featherstone book later on, not the exact same one that, and they got this one here. I think the Featherstone book had this one. In fact, it does say Donald Featherstone at El Alamein. So this one was in his book. I remember that. And so, you got modern, the tanks put together and actual pictures from history. So I always found it very fascinating from a historical point of view. Of course, being very young in my youth, I was interested in knights, and so when I saw that they had wargaming using This is the Featherstone book. This is called Featherstone's Complete Wargaming, which is different from the one I found in the library. But I assume it has probably excerpts from that book too. So, and as you can see, these are old style miniatures, very old style from those days where they used lead and tin. So, but they had some pretty awesome layouts. Look at that. And to me, it was very, very inspiring to see these things and wanting to play war games with miniatures. And of course, part of, once you get a miniature, you see these books and you want to paint them too. So, once I was able to afford some miniatures, and I have some other books here that about dioramas. Obviously, you have to paint your. Well, you don't have to paint your dioramas, but obviously to make it look pretty nice, you need to paint them. And there's War Games Terrain from Games Workshop, which is more modern. Again, later on in my adulthood, I came across this. But I did come across this one. I do have this one here that I read through. How to paint Citadel miniatures, which is very good. So, and they have other ones. They also have War Game Armies. And it says collecting and painting. Once I got miniatures, you had to learn the hobby, really, the getting brushes. Okay, this is my lifetime's worth of brushes. Some of them are well used, and I always keep the used ones, the ones that are like you would think there's no way you could paint with that. Well, there's always a use for a brush, even if it's messed up. So remember that. So I always kept all my old brushes, especially even the stiff ones. You could use it for dry brushing. So you need some regular, just some art style brushes for different things that come up for a particular technique. But when you start out, you do want to get a decent set of brushes. Okay, these the manufacturer, well, the company that was selling them was called Pegasus, I thought. But on here it says it's My Artscape, and apparently they have a website called myartscape.org. And so these are supposed to be fairly nice brushes. So I bought this set, and they're not too expensive. So but they have a variety of sizes. So, and they give you enough of them that if you mess one up, you'll still have a comparable size to use, and you don't have to worry about having either you left paint on it and now it's stiff as a board. So, but get yourself at least, don't just buy one brush, buy a set of them. They don't have to be really expensive. These, I'm pretty sure they weren't expensive. Probably under $20 for all of these. Okay. The other thing is holding the miniature. If you recall, I had the little miniature holder. Let's see if I still have it. Oh, yes. There it is. I still have it. So this is obviously a little fancy. You don't need something like this, right? But so one of the things is if you're painting a lot of miniatures and they're all very similar, one of the techniques is using a stirring stick, paint stirring stick, and they suggested putting tacky stuff on there, I found that the miniatures tend to fall off because the tacky stuff is not tacky enough. Um, so the other stick that I have I just used super glue because then you can just get an X-Acto knife and just pop it off. So, and that works fine. The other technique is I used a simple block of wood, right? And I drilled some holes in it. And then I used these large spikes, which have the big half-inch head on the top. For me, holding on to the spike, it would make my hand cramp. You know, the younger you are, it probably wouldn't bother you as much. I probably could have put something on the spike to make it, you know, to give it more um, diameter. But you could use a spike with some kind of grip around it, and you can put the spikes in here and the miniature on top. The only problem is the spikes are heavy, so this thing, because it's not wide, very wide, it tends to fall over. So that could be a problem. Okay. Um, and a new technique that I've come across is to use a box with corrugated cardboard inside, and you could get. I'm going to use. You could get. This is mostly for small parts. If your miniature comes in parts or has small parts attached that are going to be glued on, you can put an alligator clip on the end, right? And then use the alligator clip to hold the small part. And then you could use this to hold it in place while it's drying. And you can do a lot of small parts, obviously, in this corrugated cardboard. Okay, they suggest using bamboo sticks. I do have bamboo sticks, but uh, they're in the kitchen over there. Okay, but bamboo sticks with alligator clips on the end for small parts. The other thing is, I do have my own paints. I showed you the paints my friend had that he lent me that are much newer. My paints are very old. Don't know if they will. Oh, here. Also, the other possibility, instead of using spikes, you can get little dowels and put them in here, and use sticky stuff on the top. Again, the dowels were kind of narrow for me. If I paint too long on using a small item like this, it gets tiring for me. So, but you could use dowels, but this kind of setup, you can set up various miniatures, right? And when you paint a part of one, you move on to the next one. While that one's drying, you paint on this one. Especially if they have similar colors, then you can keep using the same color for each one. Okay, so that's I used that for a while. This actually using the sticks was a later thing. I used spikes to begin with, but the spikes were very long and the thing tended to fall over. On the other end of this dowel, I cut a groove through it because a lot of Games Workshop miniatures, they use a slot in a base, and so they have this little thin piece of metal at the bottom of the miniature, and so with the slot on here, I could put the miniature, squeeze the miniature in, and it would hold it in. Okay, and if it's a little loose, then you can use some tacky stuff to hold it in place. So some of these have slots, not all of them do. This one has a slot. Apparently I got creative and did all kinds of things, cutting on it. So anyway, that's one of the things you might want to have ready. Because if you, otherwise you're holding it with the miniature at the bottom with your hands, and you're getting paint, or you get your fingerprints on the miniature itself, and then you have to go back and redo those portions that you messed up. Okay, let's go down to this box, and then you can see all the paints or the mess that I have here from various companies. And then I have my old paint box down below, and you guys can check that out. Okay. All right. So here's my paints. I do have some Citadel color. I think it's shading myself. I have some Addy color. And they're still good. They're wet, that's for sure. I do have some generic paints. This is La Battaglia Painting Service, Santa Clara. Okay, some game color. Yeah, I must have went all out at the store. I mean, I even have some really old stuff. Where was it? I just saw it. Okay. And this is Reaper Miniatures. This is dry. You can see all the crack in there when they're drying. So that's probably useless. Some more Citadel stuff. It looks dry too. There's some wash, yellow wash. What's this? Color Drop System acrylic paints by Global Games. So I got some really off-brand stuff, and then I got some really old. This is it's probably this is acrylic. This is when I first started getting into acrylics. Was using polyS. Before that, I used to use enamel. Okay, and I don't know if you guys remember using enamel. Testors. Well, if you painted plastic models, then generally you used enamel. Okay, so that's where this is. I used to paint. When I first started painting miniatures, I used enamel, straight on. No primer, just straight enamel. And of course, most of it was a mess. Okay, some more polyS. This is all dry these are from the original. My first time when I first started painting. I didn't even use all the paint. So, well, that's pretty much all I have here. Some Citadel, just a variety of stuff. Most of the old Citadel stuff is dried out. Okay, and let's go to my original box, which you'll see that it has even more enamel. Okay, this is my paint box. At some point, if you paint enough, you're going to have to have somewhere to store it. Okay, have no clue what this is from. Of course, I have a ton of Testors. These are all separated, as you can see. I might be able to get it to reabsorb itself by mixing it. And then also in the early days, they use Umbro, and Umbro's still around. So, and they're considered like one of the best for plastic models. Or at least back then they were, and I've seen a video recently about they're still around, and people still like using Umbro. In fact, I think they're kind of expensive. They were expensive to me back then, but this is what was available to me in my youth. Okay, having Umbro. Again, this is Pactra khaki. Used a lot of this. It's all dried out. Ooh. Okay, it's a fail. Okay, believe me, it's dried out. Okay. Um, and of course, some of the best uh, metallics, you're going to get from enamel. It just looks fantastic compared to um, acrylic. But I have to admit, the acrylics these days have come a long ways, and they just look absolutely great too. So, and of course, we got more Humbrels in here. Okay. So, and a cap stuff for making, just putting stuff together. And of course, for terrain, you want to use cheap, or cheap, not cheap, but cheaper, less expensive paints for terrain. So that's why these big ones are in here. And this is what I started getting into making terrain, so I needed something to paint that instead of using the paints for miniatures. Oops, sorry, I'm probably driving you crazy shaking this in front of the camera. Okay, little, and if you're gonna paint on poster board or foam core, you need something that's gonna work well. Or in this case, this is plaster paint, because sometimes I would plaster over some of the terrain, and so plaster will absorb paint like crazy. So they do make paint special for plaster. Of course, priming anything is probably going to prevent. See, this is primer here. So these are various ones that. So anyway, you got to have some kind of place to put all your paints, and this is what I used for a long time. As you can tell, I still have my enamels in here. I haven't even moved my acrylics into here, except for these. Well, these I bought, and then I had space at the bottom, so I put them down here. So, okay, I got a lot of plaster paints. Apparently, I use the black a lot, so that one's been used. Okay, and here's the flesh color, all dried out. Unfortunately, one of the best flesh colors that I used on most of my miniatures in the early days. Okay. Okay, then now I'm going to show you why I'm so interested in painting. Well, the latest reason. Now I'm going to show you what needs to be done. Well, more or less. Alright. Now we're back. Hey there. Now you can see why I want to get back into painting. And as you can see, I have quite a few boxes up here of paint, of miniatures. All these boxes have some kind of miniatures in them. And if we continue down, there's even more. There's even some still in shrink wrap. So these are for doing armies here, not individual. These are mostly painted miniatures. So about 20% of all these miniatures have paint on them at some point. Okay. Some need to be repainted, and but the majority of them, all the way down to there. Okay. The majority of them need paint. So I need to get my rear end working on this. So my plan is, at least once a week. Do some painting for at least an hour. And get some of this ready to go to the table and enjoy. This is the box labeled Asian miniatures. There's more than just Asian miniatures, but as you can see, these Asian miniatures have been painted. Uh, some of these ones on the top look like they've been painted by me. These were probably purchased painted already. I also have some other paints in here, or other miniatures in here. They look to be a little bit more modern. But wait, guess what? Not only is there paint miniatures there, but there's another layer of miniatures waiting to be painted. These here are from, look to be 1920s to 1930s characters for a miniature. And here's a set, and who knows when I got this. But this is by Grenadier Models. And yes, they still need to be painted. So, these are in great condition. No, I don't think they have lead. I think these were lead free. I could be wrong. In the early days, they had lead on them, but I'm not sure about this one. So, but they do deteriorate. I do have some miniatures. These are the ones that are Frontiers that my brother gave me, and I believe that. These are not Star Frontiers miniatures. These are miniatures that I painted a while back. They are almost complete. It looks like the weapons just need to be painted, and this guy here needs to be put together. Oh, that means I got to find this. Oh, sorry. Oh, these are ones that I bought a long time ago by Rafm, R-A-F-M. They are almost complete. The weapons just need some paint on them. This guy here needs weapons. Some of these need weapons too. So, and that means I got to go find them somewhere. And this guy is missing his top half. So, we gotta find the top half of his body. All right. I just put them in this box to have a place for them. All right. This is Homicide. Has quite a few. Oh, the Horde, Green Horde version has quite a few miniatures in there, probably over 100. Let's see, and right next to it is Battle Stations, which probably has at least over 20 miniatures. This game is called Mezzo. And from the back of it, you can see that it has a few miniatures. Well, pieces. There's at least 60, over 100 pieces in here, if you include the little pyramid pieces that are inside. And this is an expansion for it called the God Pack, which has an additional 4 more miniatures. These are very large miniatures. Probably like 60 to 72 millimeters. Another expansion for Mezzo is Souls for Xibalba, which has an additional, how many miniatures? 5 city tokens, 3 god miniatures. And last but not least, 5-player expansion for Mezzo, which in itself has 11 pyramid pieces and 8 shaman minis and 8 warrior minis. And Samurai Battles, which is not a board game but an actual war game with over 100 miniatures. I think 122 miniatures. And this is the Rise of Moloch, which has over 50 miniatures, I think 63 to be exact. And got the expansion here, oops, I have the expansion here, the embassy, which has, I believe, well, let's take a look. Which has another 13 miniatures. So those are some of them there. And then we have Baker Street set. A couple more miniatures. Oh, probably more than that. Okay. Yeah, more than that. And when I bought the Rise of Moloch here, it came with extras. The extras being, this is the extra box here. That's the top part. And this is the bottom layer in the box. Okay. So this goes on top of there. And also I have this game here called The Others, which I have the expansion listed there: Envy, Lust, Wrath, Greed, Gluttony, and a couple of 3 extra expansion boxes. And of course they're all filled with miniatures, so there's definitely at least over 100 there. Probably close to 200, if I guess right. And then I have a box board game of Conan, which came with extra expansions. So that's why there's 2 boxes there. One's the core game. The other one is the extras that came with it. The one on top, this one here, is an expansion for it. Okay. And here we have 3 games. Rising Sun, which they have expansions for that, but that itself probably has at least 60 miniatures in there. Blood Rage here is a heavy miniature board game too. I would say that it has at least 50 miniatures in there. And I obviously have 2 expansions for it. Well, actually more than that, because there's this one here also. And below it is Space Hulk, which is an old board game. But this was a newer version that was made a few years back. So as you can see, I have quite a few board games that have miniatures in them. So while it's not necessary to have them painted, they look quite nice when they are. I have a few other board games that have small either tokens or miniatures of some sort that would look nice painted, but obviously Anyway, those are farther down the line. So that's a lot of what I got. Right now, the plan is to paint every Wednesday and do it live. If I can't do it live, or it seems like it's going to be uh, troublesome, I'll record it and then post it later on, either in that evening if it's a quickie, or the next day, or as soon as I can. Uh, so I'll see you then. Catch you on Wednesday. Most likely in the evening when there's not a lot of noise happening in the home. Uh, I'm in an area where it's fairly open to the rest of the house, so there's a lot of noise. So late at night, around 9 or 10, is when things tend to settle down and I don't have so much background noise.